Trying to miss Melissa, but. Oh, wow, there's people on Zoom. Oh, I'm not. Sorry. I'm trying.
Yeah, so the volume of your laptop should be all the way off. Yeah, it looks like it already is.
I need to shut the microphone off.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think that ought to do it.
All right, let me try that.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had to turn it on for the other meeting. I think that should be okay.
Good. Call the meeting to order. First thing is act on the agenda. Act on the agenda.
Just like to move up the school choice conversation.
Yeah.
I second. Except if she's not here.
Yeah, I would say as soon as she gets here, if that would be the next order of business.
Yeah. Okay. Motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? All those in favor of accepting the agenda as amended?
Aye.
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 Okay. Public comment. Public comment here, anybody?
Any comment on anything that's
Public
not on the
comment?
agenda?
Yes.
Okay, this is the time to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, ready to use the, can you hear? Yeah.
They'll raise it up for you, Mr. Stewart.
Okay, I presume you need Jean-Claude Thoreau at 1206 North Hill Road. I have both a comment and a sort of formula as a question, which relates to the Sherman property, which has been a topic of, obviously, of discussion. Specifically, has the town or someone from the town looked into a specific issue with respect to that property as to its suitability to support buildings or constructions, given the potential for its violating a town plan limit of 15% grade. It's not a zoning regulation currently, but it is part of the town plan which forbids such construction. Now, obviously, this would have to be done in the perspective of particular plans for construction. I'm not sure what's happening. We've raised the issue, and it may be an issue with the zoning board, but the clock is ticking. The zoning board is supposed to making a crucial decision in 12 days, and we're not getting a feedback. So my very specific question is, has anyone from the town looked into that very specific issue, which is an objector? It's not a question of opinion. It is a matter of fact. Does it violate or does it not violate the town plan?
I haven't looked into it, but the application has been withdrawn. His application has been withdrawn because the state law has changed. We have to treat it as agriculture, which is,
Okay, so yeah, but the town plan still exists regardless of this particular application. Ultimately, for any use of this particular property is or will be subject to this town plan regulation of a 15% maximum grade.
Chris?
yeah.
Can I just offer what I've heard Joe Fromberger, who's the chair of
Sure.
the zoning board, say? The way he explained it to me is the town plan is a vision, and the zoning regulations are the rules that need to be carried out. So what he said, I heard him say, was that the town plan says, we would like it if, but those aren't the rules are the zoning regulations.
I'm not too surprised by that answer. I'm just, I thought that maybe someone would sort of look into the future at such a, critical decision. But I understand. So basically what you're saying is that because of that, no one has actually checked on the facts of that particular property.
Actual slope of the property, no.
I'm sorry?
Nobody's checked the actual slope of the property, no.
Nobody has, okay. Okay, thank you.
My understanding of the current status, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the select board has approved the zoning board consult with a lawyer as to details about whatever our reaction to the application is. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I don't know that, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't heard any feedback from the lawyer yet. I don't know the status of that.
I guess, to the best of my knowledge, it appears as though the application, because of what's happened at the state level, the application has been withdrawn.
Yeah.
So the town has no say in the matter, except through the conditions.
That's what we are waiting to hear from the attorney, is
Okay.
what the town
Can-
is able to do, given the new law that has been passed.
Okay, all right.
Because I read specifically somewhere that it said that municipalities cannot impede cannabis operations because of this new law. But you would think, I have no idea.
It says you have to treat it exactly as you treat agriculture. If you read the zoning on agriculture, the only thing they have to meet is setback requirements. And they have to inform you that they're building a building and need a permit.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite make up.
According to our zoning regulations, if you go under agriculture, you don't need a building permit, you just have to inform the town that of what you're building and meet the setback requirements.
Okay, I thought at one time that the town had the ability to impose certain restrictions.
Not any longer.
Not any longer.
Not since the state has put in new regulations and deemed it agriculture. So it goes under the agricultural laws and bylaws of the town and the state.
But again, the zoning board is still waiting for a legal opinion on all of that, which they will have finished in time for the July 11th
For the
meeting.
July, okay, all right, thank you.
But I would point out that our state representative is expected at any moment, and I would think as we're her constituents.
Oh, you mean here at this meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I mean, she didn't come for that topic, but
Okay.
one could ask her.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chris, Tony DeGuglielmo is on Zoom, and he'd like to comment.
All right. Go ahead, Tony.
I'd like to follow up on what Sean said. This application is for a conditional, is for 4 greenhouses, a ham house, a storage, and basically, in my opinion, almost a commercial development. So I think the town has total jurisdiction, as John Clark pointed out, to regulate anybody who's asking to put greenhouses up there. And I think you do, I would hope you would have. You certainly control my house, what I can do, and where I can build, and how much I can build, and how close I can be to the road. You certainly should be able to control 4 24 by 96 greenhouses, a half house, a storage trailer, going into what, as John pointed out, a steep slope. A site plan should be developed over October so that you can actually see plans given to you, 8.5 by 11 sketch. Say, this is where I want to live. It's my opinion from a 40-year resident on Running Road, and I would still like to keep this road, beautiful setting we have up here in Andover. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to comment on this matter also, and I have a question because I've heard that in the previous discussion that Andover is zoned for residential, and anything else, I believe, requires a special use permit. Is that correct? Including agriculture?
I don't believe agriculture is a conditional use.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe agriculture doesn't fall under conditional use. I don't believe.
Agriculture doesn't follow, so agriculture, it doesn't matter what your town is zoned for, agriculture can go in anywhere.
That's what the zoning regulation says.
Okay? Thank you.
Any further comment?
So I have about 800 feet of frontage road on East Hill Road. So if I want to put greenhouses up there and farm it and draw the water out, there would be no problem with that?
As long as you meet the setbacks, like he's previously said.
How
With
much is the
With
setback?
agriculture, the setbacks on the road still apply as any building.
Do you know what the setback
It's
is?
150 from the center.
It's
Is that-
75 feet from the center line, I think.
75 feet from the center line of the road and 30 feet from any property line.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Can we have your name?
Ida Solider.
Right.
Does that mean that does that mean the town cannot request an environmental impact assessment? That's kind of just water over the bridge now?
I think we're waiting for a legal
Yeah,
opinion.
okay, so we're kind of in stasis, waiting for a legal opinion.
Is it for public comment? No.
I think Gary O'Neill's online trying to get hold of you.
Yes. Zoom, please.
Go ahead.
All right. Oh, yeah, sorry, another subject. I'm here at 1085 Steinley Road, and thank you for allowing a moment to have a request. Chris and I would like to petition the town to discontinue the northernmost, about approximately 500 feet of Steinley Road that leads to our driveway. Main reason is to eliminate some unnecessary vehicle traffic. And coming to our driveway, we have quite a few animals and pets. And outside, I had a couple of calls with cars, and they didn't know that there's no through there.
whether we would take overall maintenance of that portion of the road, and we'd certainly be willing to work with Charlie and town to develop that turnaround for town and vehicles and other vehicles. So I want to, I guess, see about starting a potential process and request of the select board.
Couldn't hear a lot of that, but,
They want to end,
The road earlier, because
Yeah.
it turns around in their driveway.
yeah.
I didn't hear the amount he was looking
it's
for.
like 500 feet up the road, there's a big landing. They want to put a cul-de-sac there and kind of end the road.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to get the warning going, you know, to ask the townspeople if they're okay with it.
So we do the same thing as we just did, correct? Have to have a site visit and schedule that and
I would ask that we get that in writing.
Yeah.
Gary, can you hear what I'm saying? We
Yeah,
We would like-
we
would-
would,
Can we get that request in writing, please, with the details that you just talked about? And then, Chris, am I correct in saying you would put it on a future agenda?
Yeah.
Charlie was up there today, just so you
Okay.
Charlie
Thank you.
talked to me about it this morning, too. The only thing I'm concerned about is I think there might be a right-of-way issue for property that's beyond them.
Okay.
Not sure about that. Anyway, so, next on the agenda, we'd like to move Kelly Paola up to front, so you don't have to wait around.
Would you like me to speak at this microphone?
Sure.
I know that there were some questions about local option tax as well as some school-related things. Do you want me to speak about one before the other, or is that not a big deal?
Either one, jump.
Okay, the local option tax is a little easier, and which local option tax are you considering asking the voters to?
This is the first public discussion of this.
Oh, wow, okay. Well, then, I can just tell you what happened in Londonderry, and then, have all of your discussions. Londonderry actually has voted on having a local option tax several times, and up until this past town meeting hadn't been successful. Most towns have to get approval after town approval from the legislature to have a local option tax, but depending on what town you are in and what your tax status is, there are a few numbers of towns that can vote through a local option tax without legislative approval. And that had to do with Act 60 way back in the day.
We are one of those.
And you're one of those towns. Congratulations. That makes the process a whole lot easier. In Londonderry, one vote was to pass all of the local option taxes available to us. That went down in flames. The second attempt was to do rooms and meals. That was also not successful. And then this past time, they decided to just apply the rooms tax. And that passed by a pretty significant margin, actually. And even though rooms and meals is often mentioned in the same breath when you're talking about taxes, they're actually two separate taxes, which is why you can either pass them together or just one or the other. But the other things, and I don't know that any of these would apply, you can also tax alcohol, which I don't think would have much of an impact from a revenue standpoint in Andover. And you could do sales as well, and again, I don't know what kind of an impact that would have from a revenue standpoint. But, it's up to your voters to decide if that's something that they want to do. I know in Londonderry, we opted to have whatever revenue comes in from the local option tax just going to reducing the tax rate. Some communities have it going specifically into a fund for one thing or another, economic development. Some have done housing, some have done recreation. That's really a local choice where you decide to put the money. So anyway, that's what I can tell you about what has happened in Londonderry. It starts as of July 1st. We'll see what happens. The projections for Londonderry's rooms, 1% was going to be about $15,000 a year. And nobody knows how accurate that's going to end up being in the end. But so as far as the school-related stuff goes, I know Scott's on the school board, and then Scott said that you're on the school board as well. And I'm sorry, what was your name? And from Andover as well, or? I'm from Cavendish. Okay.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. So I am curious as to, I know you want to hear about what leaving your school district would look like and what that would mean around school choice. But I have also heard some specific complaints about the current school district and the lack of voice that Andover feels like they have and the lack of services they feel like they're getting from the school district. And so I guess I would like to hear more from all of you or any of you about those particular challenges and if there are ways of dealing with them within the current school district configuration, mostly because the process of leaving the school district is not short or easy or inexpensive. I know one of them is transportation. That seems to be a overwhelming challenge and loud conversation. I know that the PCB testing is going to present a lot of challenges. The mascot issue has been explosive. The bond vote that recently didn't pass was, not without controversy. So I realize that there's a whole host of things, but I would also encourage you to continue to think about ways of addressing the challenges you have within your current configuration. Because again, this is not an easy process to withdraw. And can you tell me a little bit about what Cavendish is thinking? Because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I have a sense that Cavendish's decisions will probably need to be known to Andover in the end.
First, I can't speak as a school board tonight. I can speak as a Cavendish resident.
Sure.
And I have to tell you, I'm a lot of pain contracts, so forgive me if I'm not clear. I can tell you that Cavendish School has been targeted by the superintendent as a building that needs to be rethought. She's proposed everything from combining classes with other schools to closing the building altogether. Obviously, it's caused a lot of concern in the community. And so there's a lot of interest in trying to be creative about, what the community actually wants to do with their school. It's worth saying that, for 30 years, it was the Cavendish school in the Cavendish town. And many of the teachers who are there have spent their careers at the school, and they've created an environment where the school has distinguished itself and it has had superb results over its time, over its existence. Mm-hmm. Since Act 46, many of the support structures that Cavendish enjoyed have been undercut, and the services they relied on that fell to the district have been trimmed to the point where it's not an equitable situation. And so there's real concern about what the future may hold for this school, and how interested the district is in creating a situation where this is a viable school, the kind of school that it's always been. I'm sorry, I can't be more clear.
No, that's.
Please.
I'm with Steve. I'm his driver, but I'm also from Cavendish. We recently had a forum where many people in town came specifically to talk about the school and education and what they wanted. And we did ask the question, how many of you would like school choice for 7th through 12th grade? And the response was overwhelmingly to keep the elementary school, but to have school choice for 7th through 12th. If we had asked for his vote of no confidence, I don't know, Steve, do you think we would have gotten it that night for 7th through 12th at Green Mountain?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's really the
Can I ask
yeah.
a clarifying question? Was that directed to the entire school district, or was that just a conversation that was happening within Cavendish?
This was just in Cavendish.
Okay.
It was our forum that we brought our community together to say, what do you want?
Right. It was an enormous turnout for Cavendish. There's 30, 35 people.
Oh, no, it was more like
Was
50
it?
or 60.
Okay.
So
Stand corrected.
the reason for my question about that is I have been reading and rereading the process of withdrawal. And in it, one of the things you specifically have to do is name where the possibilities for forming another school district are for you. So I don't see anywhere in here where you can leave a school district and then remain a standalone, single-town, non-operating school district, which means you're just not operating any schools. My reading of this, and so I'm not a lawyer, and you should definitely talk to your lawyers with your supervisory unions about their interpretation of this, but it directs you to talk to other school districts that you would, after you withdraw from one district, you would be joining up with.
Right.
So that's why I asked about Cavendish, because I have heard that there are some conversations in Cavendish as well, and maybe that presents an opportunity for your two towns to leave a district and then form a district.
I think there's real interest there.
When it's good that there's that possibility, because I think if there were no possibilities for other school districts that were interested in having Andover join them, that would sort of be an automatic, not sure where you could go from there.
So Cavendish and Ludlow could be, there's conversations, I think, between Cavendish and Ludlow, and that's something that I hadn't occurred to me, that Andover could possibly
Yes.
try to communicate.
That was another town that I had been thinking about as someone that it would be worth talking to.
That's good thinking.
Yeah. And, and where those conversations might go, I couldn't say. But without having options for where you could go as a town to join another school district, I think you couldn't really move forward. So I can tell you what the initial process is if you want to move forward, but I really think that for all of you, Andover and I don't represent Cavendish or Ludlow, but I feel like there's still a lot of conversation that you should have amongst yourselves in town before you take any legal action to go forward. Again, this process is lengthy. It would not be inexpensive. It wouldn't be easy. There are lots of places along the way where it could be made clear that it wasn't something that was going to be viable to move forward with.
I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
When you said that it's going to be expensive repeatedly. Are you referring to legal expenses specifically, or there are other expenses associated
Yes,
with this?
and there are costs associated with having the study committees that each town would have, or you might be able to create a joint study committee if you were talking amongst yourselves about doing something. But there's a study committee for the towns wanting to withdraw. There's a subcommittee formed on the current school board that is sort of the liaison between the study committees and the full school board. So there's cost associated with doing all of that. And it's just,
Yeah, I'm seeing the legal costs. Are there outside consultants that you would retain for the study committees? Or where are you seeing the costs on the study committees if they're established from the community?
that may be a possibility, but that's, in one of the statutes that I was reading, there was something about that each town has to approve, I think it was up to $50,000 for the cost of running I don't remember if it was the subcommittee or the exploratory committees. That was not you could spend more than that. It's just to say that there are costs.
Okay, so just to be, since you're here, to put a fine point on it, the towns are required to put $50,000 in escrow or whatever toward the cost of these subcommittees?
It has to go to a town vote.
Uh-huh.
So the town would have to vote to approve that expenditure. And I'm not sure if it goes into escrow or who holds the money and is paying the bills.
But that's a firm requirement.
I believe so.
Okay.
It's not one of the first things, though.
Okay.
It's a thing that has to happen once you have gone through the petitioning process around voting to leave.
Okay. Just so I understand, this $50,000 is paid to who?
It's to cover costs.
Okay, and those costs may be legal and they may be...
Legal, administrative, they're...
Okay, but I'm just, again, who's administrative? Just so that I'm clear when somebody asks me.
I don't know the correct answer to that question.
All right.
So I can ask and get back to you, but I don't know what all of the costs might be. But I can guarantee that if the school district or the supervisory union is supplying administrative support, there will be cost associated with that. But I'd have to ask to know if there are, if there's a finite list of things or if it's...
Are there requirements as far as which attorneys the towns could retain?
I don't know the answer to that either. No one who has a conflict of interest, but beyond that,
Okay, for example, there was an attorney in town with a background in education who wanted to do this as a pro bono thing that would not be a problem?
I can't answer that question.
All right.
Can I have, if a school were to be condemned as unsafe, would that whole process be bypassed?
Which whole process?
This whole application process. I'm worried about the PCBs.
Oh, yes. Right. If a school was no longer able to operate, the school district would have to find a way to continue to educate their children. If they don't have a facility, they're going to have to send their students out, I would think, outside of the district, which ends up being...
That would be worst case scenario. I have no idea. I'm not implying that that's going to happen, but it occurred to me to ask.
Right. If your school district isn't operating a school to provide education for its students, they are still obligated to provide education for their students and pay tuition for them to attend a school.
Is a school district obligated to provide transportation?
No.
They're obligated to supply transportation to special education children.
Yes, but not across the board to everybody, and certainly not equitably, unfortunately, which seems, again, to be one of the problems that Andover is dealing with.
Yeah, we have the problem.
But I think you don't have someone that can take students down to Chester for grade school, correct?
There was very few days there was a reliable bus this year, and that is being on the...
One one time we were, what was it, 6 o'clock in the morning, we had a meeting down
I
there.
think it was 10 minutes of 6 at Ral's Inn, they said, and everybody said absolutely not. That is just what I was told. That didn't come via email or anything, because I just stopped. There was an update every day, and there was no bus, or there was no morning bus.
That is, we
It's-
have not dealt with that level of issue either at the grade school level or kids going over. There was an occasional, because our driver was sick.
No, we had to, actually,
You
in the
would-
nap.
We didn't, sorry, this is Kate.
Hi, Kate.
We didn't have a bus all every day this year in the morning. We only had an afternoon bus.
She's also Cavendish, right?
Yeah, sorry, hi.
From what I got, the Andover residents that have kids gave up on the busing system and drove their kids both ways, to and from school, every single day.
How many years?
Right.
Well, I mean, this is the worst year. I know busing has been an issue before, but this is by far the worst that I've heard.
In
I mean,
2.5 years.
Right.
How many kids do you have going to either the grade school and the high school?
it was 30, what, Scott? 34 total from K to 12. Just, that's it.
And it has occurred to me that solving that problem is probably a much more cost-effective solution than, dissolving a school district and reconstituting new school districts. But that's up to the board to decide to do that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Scott has mentioned that the makeup of the school board is,
There's 6 Chester, 3 Cavendish, 1 Baltimore, 1 Andover.
Jeanette, do you have a copy of the Articles of Agreement from when the school district was formed?
Good question. I'd have to look.
If you look and you find it, would you mind sending it to me? Because there should be something in there that talks about when population changes, how you reconfigure your school board to still be in line with what your Articles of Agreement said. And that was another, wow, that would be a much better way of addressing some of these challenges if you just had the school board weighted appropriately for its membership. But without reading the articles, it's hard to comment too much on that. How much of the process do you want me to talk about tonight? Or are there other questions that I can?
It still would have to go to vote to the townspeople.
Yes,
So-
it has to go to vote to the townspeople, and all of the other towns in the district also have to vote. So,
So when you say the other towns have to vote, they have to vote to say, okay, we'll let them do this?
Correct.
yes.
And it's the townspeople that would be making that vote, not the
Correct.
school board?
There's a petitioning process that you have to petition each town to get each town to vote on your withdrawal.
Well, first one would be the town of Andover would have to vote to see if the majority wants to leave, and then you go to the towns and
Yes.
say, hey, we want to leave.
So basically what you're saying, and it seems clear, we need to have some internal conversations in Andover to see if this is something that Andover people would like. And if they would, then the select board would have to recommend that we vote on it. That these are all different steps that could take a while.
Yes.
And then.
And those are just the first two.
Yeah. But we're not even, this is just the first, this is just a nibble today.
Yes, absolutely. And same for Cavendish. Even if you vote to do it, you petition each of the towns says, sure, go ahead and leave. You then have to have a study committee to look at all of the impacts of your leaving, all of the impacts of the new district that you are proposing to form, both on students and on tax rates and on, everything. You have to have a plan for how your students are going to be provided with special education. And, the study itself is very comprehensive, and they want you to look at everything because they want you to know the consequences of what's going to happen. And the school district The current school district is also going to be looking at the impacts on it if towns leave. And what will be looked at by the state in its entirety is all of those impacts. Is this going to be good or bad for Chester? Is this going to be good or bad for Cavendish? So they're your choices, and then you can move forward with them. But as you're looking at the whole picture, everyone's going to be looking at the impact from all of the angles. So that's why I say it's not an easy process. And given, I'm not sure what the population of the Cavendish students is, but did you say you had 34?
We had 67 kids entering K through 6 in the fall. That's not counting pre-K, which is probably 11 to 20, somewhere there. There are a lot of families right now that are looking at other options because of the PCB issue. So we cannot give you a good estimate for what's going to happen. We just know a number of families are looking elsewhere. I mean, the issue of the bond, we're in a situation where Chester can and often does have voters hall. And that's not in Cavendish's interest, Andover's, or Baltimore's. So we could end up paying a really hefty sum of money to keep Green Mountain Union High School open when we send very few children there. And that's something that really has to be considered, considering the whole idea was we paid.
Well, in the study that you'd be doing, you know, it's like the pros and cons of everything. And, you know, money is one issue, and then there are other issues that can be a pro or a con. Environmental factors, you know, you can.
Scott's got those
Yep.
numbers for you.
So Cavendish has 152 kids, Baltimore has 14, Chester has 62, Andover has 30.
Is that population or that is in school?
That is in school.
And another thing that you will be looking at when you're studying this is the impact on your tax rate, which is a driving factor for a lot of people's decision-making around things like this. And when you have a small student population, that often leads to having a high per pupil spending number, which tends to have a negative impact on tax rates. And, you know, that's just math, but it's something to consider. And I think that that's one of the reasons that they don't want towns going back to creating single town, non-operating school districts, because it's financially not really a feasible thing. And so by having multiple towns and having a larger total student population, it helps mitigate some of those drastic swings in tax rates when you're looking at a small pool.
If there were towns that decided that voted to withdraw and everybody went through all the paces, could the state still, and the voters, and we all voted for it, could the state still deny the request? So it's not really up to the voters in the end? Or is it?
Well, it's not going to happen without the voters. But you know, it has to go before the state board, and I believe that they're the final decision maker, and something happens in the legislature as well. So you're right, your voters, just because they vote to do it doesn't mean that it's ultimately in the end going to happen. Mm-hmm. And in the course of looking at it, you as a town, or you all might look at it and say, well, this isn't really going to be a good long-term solution. Yeah. I have no way of knowing what that would all look like, but you're certainly not going to know any of those things without studying it. But I really think, like you said, this is just sort of the first bite, and you all as towns have a lot of conversations to have if this is something that you want to do. And again, I would encourage you to continue to talk to the current school board in its current configuration and talk about how you could maybe solve the transportation problem. And if the board is currently unbalanced based on population, you know, there's got to be something in writing that says how that can be addressed. I wouldn't think that they would have approved articles of agreement that didn't include something like that. So I wouldn't encourage you to put all of your eggs in the withdrawal basket, because you're still in a school district and you still want to get the services that you should be getting while you're still in that school district. And, you know, it would be a lot of work. But, yeah.
You're not my rep.
I'm not.
So I'm going to be brutal for a second.
Go ahead.
You've been very dissuasive and encouraged us not to really pursue this. It's too expensive, it's too long to go through. You'd have to have the agreement from the district and, you know, the study group and state. Ultimately, whether you vote for it or not, this could be a futile. I mean, give us a positive pitch. How could this succeed?
I'm just telling you all the steps that you have to go through.
Okay, but tell us how it would work, how it could work.
Well, if the study committee decides to move forward, and then the school district as a whole decides to let everybody leave, if your plan to make a new school district is approved, I'm not saying that it's a foregone conclusion that it wouldn't work, and I'm not saying don't do it, but you have to be aware that it is all of these things, and it is going to take all of that process and all of that energy.
Right.
And I'm trying to be honest about what will be expected of you if you decide to move forward.
Are there any recent examples of a town exiting the district?
Yes, Lincoln.
Yes, Lincoln just left.
So did Stowe, but Stowe already had the infrastructure there to be from pre-K all the way through 12. Lincoln is much more a town the size of Cavendish, with a school the size of Cavendish, but they left.
They didn't realign with another school, though.
They didn't, but then the law changed in the process. As they were going through their process,
Yes.
the legislature changed the withdrawal process. So what you would be expected to do is not going to be exactly the same as what Lincoln had to do in order to leave.
And, you know, there's so many variables. Like, you all may be better off dealing as part of Floodbrook, because that's an easy, you know, how do people normally go? And that's something you have to consider. Like, Ludlow is right next to us. It's easy peasy. There are lots of things to consider. 14 kids is not a huge number of children. That's what you have, right? 34. Okay. Baltimore's 14. Okay.
It's still not a huge number of enrollment in the school district.
It's not. It's not. And depending on what happens with Green Mountain Union High School, that could be a very heavy tax burden. And that's something that we all have to consider. And there may be ways, you know, I have talked to Lawrence Fury, our superintendent, and, you know, we're having all of our conversations just as I'm assuming you are. And I think there are some things we can do and need to do. But she's right. I mean, it's going to be a process. It's not going to change tomorrow.
Yeah. And you still have to operate in the school district that you're in while you're going through that process. And that's, you know, just don't forget that, because it's you know, you still deserve the best service and the best education that you're, you know, that you should be getting, regardless of what school district you're in. So
The arts, I mean, I have a list.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you,
And-
Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. But while we have you here, do we have time to just ask her about there's a lot of people in Andover who are really upset because of an agricultural, a cannabis operation that has applied for an application. These people are here because of that. But I'm not the best person to explain it. But if does it take a Can you clarify, like a cannabis grow operation does not need any okays from the town anymore, or how does that go? Do you know?
That's what we're asking the lawyer.
Yeah, you should ask your lawyer, because it depends on the size of the operation and which license they've applied for, and it's different.
And all the new regulations that went into play, and
Yeah.
really the lawyers.
I would need a lot of information in order to give you the answer to that.
I just couldn't help but ask, 'cause a lot of people came because of that.
It's different depending on the size of the
But
operation.
they will get their answer after the lawyer gives us an answer. So, and the lawyer's going to give us the legal answer that we need, not a, well,
You should get your-
maybe, you know, I'm not sure. They're going to give us a legal answer, which is what I would think everyone, including the gentleman that's putting in the permit, or actually has withdrawn the permit, needs. It's what we all need. We can't guess on what to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My concern was that, and you mentioned the size of the agricultural operation. I think the concern of this area is, I mean, the land has been clear cut and, ruined in certain aspect to the detriment of the neighbors, which is, not a great thing. But, legally speaking, the size of the operation, the water use, the fact that this is cannabis shouldn't matter. It's an agricultural enterprise, whether it's cannabis or tomatoes. So does the state differentiate?
Yes.
Make special treatment to cannabis growers over tomato growers?
Depending on the size of the operation, there are different regulations that you have to follow. And I don't know what the square footage regulations are. My understanding is smaller operations are considered agriculture from a zoning standpoint and don't have to, they're not considered a commercial operation from a zoning standpoint. Larger operations are.
Okay, so,
Which is different than a tomato grower.
okay, thank you.
But I couldn't give you more specifics than that.
Thank you.
I can leave what I printed out, which is just the statute on withdrawal. I can just give it to you. And if you do come across the articles of agreement, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Come back as this continues, but talk amongst yourselves.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Back to new business. Wrap it up there. Just giving us a sheet, the figures.
So Susan had mentioned it would be good to just go through and talk about things that, are, the money is allocated for. And so that's what I put together, and as we get further into matches for grants and things, I can keep updating this, and obviously other ideas of things that you might want to consider.
My real only concern is just that we don't leave money on the table at the end of the year. But it just occurred to me, would a sound assessment for this building be eligible for that?
Absolutely.
Do we know what we could do to make this building more user-friendly for meetings? In
No,
terms
we
of.
don't know. So yes, you're right,
So-
we would need something like
Well,
that.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's a high priority compared to other things, but if it looks like, I don't know how long it would take, if it looks like there's extra money, I think that would be very useful, because, I mean, I'm just having a really hard time even hearing a lot of stuff, and maybe there's some, for $5,000, maybe we could do something, I don't know what.
So if this is all of this potential goes through, that leaves 38,751, so that would be what you're speaking of.
Yeah.
That would leave, that has to be allocated by December 31st, correct, Jeanette, this year?
It has to be allocated, and then we
Allocated,
have
it has to be, not done, but has to be
Right.
spoken for, right?
Right.
Do you have other ideas of, because there is quite a bit. of
I mean, what I put under other was digitization of land records. That's certainly an expensive process. Most municipalities have that so that people can go online and do a search and pay a fee, and it saves travel time for title searchers and attorneys. So that's certainly something I want to look into, if nothing else, at least to get the land records digitized. I mean, the index itself.
I
not-
think things like that are a great idea. You make things
Things long-term.
user-friendly, that is long, yeah, like Robin just
The
said.
long-term.
It's a long-term thing.
And it's going to save, in the long run, it'll save, you know, especially our older books from continuously being open, closed, copied, moved around. It'll preserve all the actual original documents better.
So is that something that you would look into to see how much, yeah?
Yep.
So
Yeah, that sounds
I
like a
think that's
great
a great
idea.
idea.
Yeah, I will start reaching out to vendors. There are 3 or 4 that are used pretty consistently throughout the state.
Not that I don't like your idea too, because.
Well, no, maybe
It's
we
an
can do
It's not saying
both.
that those
Right.
both can't be a
Right.
possibility
Right.
with not knowing how much
And the
either.
generators?
So a generator update, we have generators at both buildings. The one here is operational.
Wow.
And the one at the town garage, it's there. The propane is in place, but what was discovered was that power pole, the service needs to be replaced. So that turned into kind of a longer process because we had to involve Green Mountain Power. And they did put the pole in earlier than we had expected, so the pole is there. And I don't, Chris, did the service actually get moved, or did they just put
No.
the new pole in?
Pole's just there.
Okay, so we're just waiting to get the service moved to a new pole because it had something to do with who owned the pole and who owned the line, and we couldn't use what was already there. So we did get an estimate from HB that adds another $4,900 to the bottom line price of the project. But we're still under the total grant that we are eligible to use for that.
Okay.
And as
Could
far as
we,
do,
because,
I'm sorry.
I'm interrupting. We're still under the total grant, and we would like to use up the grant if we can. We had talked something about a building for one of the generators. Is that something that, or no? 'Cause
No, I think that was
don't
when we were talking about
know
the
if-
other.
because
of-
Other type of generator.
Because of the application that we filled out for the specific grant for those generators, that if it wasn't in that original scope of the project, then,
Oh, okay.
then I don't think we can add pieces
Add
and
pieces.
parts
Okay,
to it.
that makes sense.
But we certainly have we still have other grants in the pipeline,
Okay,
and we still have ARPA money.
right.
That brings us to the next thing on the agenda, update on various grants.
So if you recall way back, we got what's called a Caring for Canopies grant, and that one is specifically for removing some limbs and ash trees around some of the cemeteries. So Hank is working with a vendor on that project. And these 2 generators are the Emergency Operations Center grant, so even with our delay with the pole, we still should be done. We have to be done with the project by September. There's a grant, the grant for rewriting our local hazard mitigation plan. That's underway. The next step in that is you all ended up hiring the Regional Planning Commission to be the contractor on that project to help us rewrite that. So I believe the next step is they need to have a kickoff meeting and talk about the plan as it exists now and what the vision might be for any changes, and certainly they'll have a lot of professional input as to what else needs to be put in the plan perhaps going forward. And there may be new federal regulations about what we need to have in the plan as well. The Municipal Energy Resilience Program grant, the first step in that, there's a mini grant that I've applied for that can be used to get an ADA assessment on all 3 buildings, which we will have done. I haven't received approval for the $4,000. But what that's for is to have someone come in and do an assessment, and then the municipal energy grant, which Regional Planning Commission said we are one of the municipalities that's perfectly aligned to utilize that grant, because it really is about taking old buildings that the town owns and making them much more energy efficient. And so we will have all 3 buildings assessed, and that grant can be up to $500,000 per municipality, and there's no match. And part of it, I think it was up to 20%, can be used to meet our ADA requirements that come up during that original assessment. So first we'll do that, then we get a free energy assessment. You can do a level 1 or level 2. There's not a lot of difference between the two, just in how many years worth of utility bills you have to pull out, and whether or not the level 2 takes longer, and they do what's called the blow door assessment. So we get that, that's free, and then we'll find out what's available and whether we prioritize, one building, prioritize the buildings. I don't know, depending on costs and things, if all 3 buildings, if everything can be done, but certainly, the garage and the town hall are the 2 priorities, 2 biggest. I mean, the office will be fine the way it is, if need be. I think that's all of them. Oh, and grants and aid is the highway grant. We do that every year. The state is actually running that program now. It used to be run through the Regional Planning Commission. That is where the money comes after we've spent. It's a reimbursement grant. So the extensive ditch work that you see get done in the summer, like digging out the ditches and then putting in that, what's called riprap, those big stones, and lining the ditches, and all of that is to comply with the municipal roads general permit, which is a state mandated permit to actually do that kind of ditch work. And we work really closely with the Regional Planning Commission to identify and prioritize what ditches need to come next, because they're looked at as, which ones are the most vulnerable to flooding that's going to do more damage down the road from where these ditches are, and how much that would cost. So that's that's the work they're doing in North Hill. Is that right, Chris, in July?
Right.
So that's what that is. So once that is done, we submit all of those expenses to the state, and then we get the reimbursement grant, and that's what you see at the beginning of the budget that says grant income. That's reimbursement income is what it is, and we always spend enough that we get our maximum award back to us as income.
And there's a bridge grant,
Which one?
the bridge grant. If we get any.
The structures grant, yes.
If anybody bids on the.
No one submitted a bid, so I don't know what you all want to do about that next. But we are eligible for that grant to help repair or replace the Boynton Hollow Bridge and the Campground Bridge. Repair, I think, is what we talked about, right? I mean, we can certainly put it out to bid again, maybe, or I don't know if you want to wait a while.
Can we reach out too?
I think Charlie did, but I have to ask him. I don't know if it's just too soon, because the deadline to finish it is like November of 2024.
Yeah.
That's the deadline we put to get the work done, so I don't know if it was just too far out for people to consider. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, we have to try that again.
And do you think right away, or do you think wait a while? What?
As I soon.
Probably right away, yeah, because
Put it back out
if they have to be done by then, I mean, they would have to be started
in the
Early
spring.
next year.
in the spring or summer of next year.
Okay, so I'll get those ads back out.
Yeah. So, Lovejoy Brook Farm.
So I put that on the agenda sort of as an informal request from the multitude of residents who have called and emailed me in the last month. There's been an uptick in the amount of stuff piling up at the farm, the encroachment on the road right-of-way, which is at least one thing that the select board has some power to take action on. concerns with just interactions with vehicles blocking the road, people not being able to get through, not feeling safe trying to get through. You all have specific select board emails listed on our website, and I am going to continue to encourage people to email all of you directly, because I think it would help all of you to hear all of these things firsthand. So that's why I'm putting it out there, and actually that's why there are a lot of people here besides cannabis cultivation, is because of what's happening up there. If you haven't driven by, it's worth a drive.
Seems like they just get it cleaned up enough to make people happy for a few minutes, and then it's back to the same.
It starts all over.
Same.
I would like a clarification, because I've had a couple of I had a conversation with somebody who was concerned about gunshots, but I don't know, I don't have any information as to whether that's, I don't know that there's anything against the law about it, so, but I did have somebody who, my understanding is that it is allowed to park on the roads in Andover in the summer, in the non-winter months. Is that true? Because somebody was telling, a neighbor was telling me that there were cars kind of parked in the road, but is that okay?
I don't know, let's ask the road commissioner. It would seem to me, I mean, Chris needs to address it, or we need to look it up, but I don't think you're allowed to block the right-of-way.
Right.
If people are having trouble getting by, it's dangerous.
You think you're allowed to park on the roadside, but not, you're not saying you can't block the right of way.
So
Parking's
even if your butt end of your car is sticking out into the road, that would be against rules?
I would say that wouldn't be parking in the road, that would be obstructing the road. You're talking about it perpendicular, not parallel with the road, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just assuming from reading, parking there to go walk a loop on one of our roads is different than leaving the car there for a week. I mean, I don't know if there's anything written about that, or if it's just like a common thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything written about it,
But and like you said, there's a parking ban in the winter.
I know that.
You cannot obstruct the right of.
I thought it was okay to park in the summer,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
They still can't obstruct the town boys being able to do their job. They can't mow the roadside with the cars there. So,
But there is no time frame in which you can park your car and leave it parked?
I'd have to look it up, but I don't believe
Look that
so.
up, I think. I don't dare say like without.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, again, the 800 feet along East Hill Road, it's my understanding from passing by that property, which I do frequently now, that person is running a business. That's not just they're putting some stuff by the side of the road, like every once in a while, we'll put a bike out that says free on it and somebody takes it away. This is a commercial operation. And it's not agriculture, it's a business of what looks like used furniture and a lot of, I'll say, stuff. And so people stop to buy the stuff and they stop the cars. But all of that, I'm not sure if any of that matters. This person is operating a business in an area that's zoned residential and with agriculture that I don't entirely understand, but this is a business, or it appears to be a business.
Yeah.
So how do we approach you to say, what can you do to look into this? If I take my frontage on East Hill Road and decide I'm going to have a used car lot, can I do that? I don't think so. I hope not. That's the question.
Yeah.
I mean, is this person breaking the law by operating a business?
They'd be there operating a business, so yes.
I'm sorry?
They'd be there operating a business, you can say they are.
I don't know for sure, but that's what it seems, that they're buying and selling, that stuff comes in, stuff gets sold off, but no, I have no direct I mean, to go undercover and try and buy something. No, I don't mean to joke around, but I think it's important because it's horribly unsightly, it's unsafe, and if the person is operating a business illegally, then the town certainly has the power to say, no, can't do that.
Going to zoning regulations, it have to be a conditional use, and they haven't applied to that, so.
Okay, thank you.
You talked about local option tax. How is the garage for the commissioner's report? And I believe, do you know if the excavator actually came today, Janet?
What's that?
Did they get the rental excavator today? Did it come?
I didn't see it unless it was delivered to the site.
Might have been delivered to the site. It's supposed to be here today anyway. You're looking for it this morning. The radio situation.
I saw it at the end of North Hill and East Hill.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the radio situation, the salesman's gonna come down and go through their equipment they have now and see what they can save and what they need to replace. See if there's any hope for any equipment they've got now. But Charlie's thinking that's what that $30,000 was on the ARPA sheet. He's thinking it's gonna be about that.
And are they coming in? I know that was an issue. Are they getting them to?
They're still that dead spot.
It's still a dead spot on the digital ones. They're probably gonna have to go with the analog ones and go with maybe a 100-watt radio instead of 50.
Yeah.
Make it work, but you're gonna come down and see if they can do some updates on it, what they've got now. Go from there. And you also got new tires on the back of the grader and on the front of the mowing tractor.
I've heard many more compliments on the roadsides that they're doing a very good job with that.
Yeah.
It probably is a little more expensive than having the other guys do it, but you're getting a lot more done.
It's much more thorough too. I think it's gonna save in the long run on them having to debrush the sides that they have to.
Somebody's got it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, my name is Fred Schuster. We own the property abutting the Lovejoy Brook junkyard, and we kind of talked for a couple of minutes on that and skipped over it. And we are borderline devastated about what's going on next door to us, whether it's the gunshots, the yelling, the swearing, the overall junk. The lady who spoke a couple minutes ago about this being a commercial operation is absolutely correct. There are signs up there that they're selling firewood and they're selling this, and I just need to know what, if anything, the town can do about this. My property value has been clobbered because of this. It was really nice when Lydia was alive and this was an idyllic farm and it had cows and goats and sheep, and it was great. And now it's an embarrassment to the town, and it's embarrassment to me and anybody who comes up here. And this agenda item got quickly moved on, and I would ask that we come back to it and ask if there's anything we can do about this situation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Jeanette, there is a tenant there, correct? They are not the homeowners. The previous time we dealt with this, they were a tenant there, correct? We dealt with
Correct.
someone else.
The owner does not live on the premises.
You at least get a hold of him again.
Can't they be sent a letter, can't Mr. Nichols be sent a letter saying that he's in violation of zoning regulations because he has an permitted business operating
I
there.
think so.
And the other question is, if it's, I don't know what the definition of a salvage yard, but the state is in charge of permitting those, and are they operating what the state would define as a salvage yard without a permit?
Is it
And
vehicles?
That's pretty serious.
My apologies, I haven't been up there in over a month
Everything.
or two. But I do know it's very distinctive on vehicles that are unregistered, so that is something I can personally look up, and I'll see if that is something we can, because I know that's how you become a salvage for motor vehicles, is amount of unregistered vehicles on your property.
Yeah. 5, I think.
I think that's the number, but I wanted to make sure.
So that would be worth looking
That would be
into.
something to look
Right.
into
Snowmobiles
also.
count as vehicles?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I also think that it is, I mean, they're gonna be going by there mowing, and they should hear that too, that the stuff can't be within the right of way, especially when trying to take care of the road.
Right.
I mean, Charlie has spoken several times that they can't do what they need to do with the road because of all of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a letter is definitely a first step, and then,
Richard? or Chris?
oh, sorry.
Sort of a general question, because it talked about commercial. Does the town generate revenue from commercial operations within the town?
Only
No.
property taxes.
Excuse me?
Only property taxes.
Okay. Do the property taxes, are they related in some way to the volume of business being done by this commercial operation?
No.
No. It's just the value of the property you own.
Usually,
Real
that's
estate.
unusual. Most properties that are not residential are often valued on the basis of the business activity that is generated. So there's been no thought to.
So I don't know if that's in places where there's commercial zoning, and perhaps it would be different if we had commercial zoning, which right now we don't. But that was one of the reasons that the board has started talking about that local option tax that you heard Kelly talking about. So the select board needs to decide or vote to put that to the voters, and then I would assume at a town meeting or a public hearing, hear what the voters of town have to say about doing that and what we would want to apply it to. So you can do it, as Kelly said, separately. You can do it on rooms, you can do it on meals and alcohol, you can do it on sales. I think that's all three.
Which in Andover, honestly, sales are the only option because there's not any stores that sell, and there's only 2 places that at this moment rent rooms, I believe.
No, the rooms would be the
Rooms-
short-term rentals. That
All
would
the
be-
short-term rentals
that
would
be
pay
the main
that.
way to
But
get
as
money.
of
And-
right now, nothing has changed in that aspect yet, but it would apply
But
to
right,
that.
so it
In
would
the
apply.
future, it would apply to that.
And the other thing, I would say, in terms of meals and alcohol, there are 2 establishments, Rowell's Inn, but the Miss Esmeralda up on Steigers Road serves very high-end dinners and very high-end beverages to go with those dinners, so I guess I wouldn't minimize what could be gained for the town by perhaps asking if the voters would like to approve those taxes for each of those items, but that's a discussion first for the board to say, let's go ahead and throw it out to them, and then let the voters decide if they did or did not want to adopt such a thing. But that would be a way to get some revenue from businesses.
So the town basically gains no financial benefit from an agricultural activity, no matter how profitable it may be, no matter how extensive it is or anything.
Correct.
Correct.
Huh.
And option tax, Jeanette sent that only 60% of that comes back to the town, correct? It was 60-40? Was it 60 the town gets and then 40? Because the state collects it all and then reimburses the town.
Maybe we could put that on an agenda for a future meeting, because we passed over it just now.
Well, yeah, we
Or
can
are we
continue-
discussing it now?
Well, we can keep talking about it, and then I would suggest at some point that you would want to set a date for a public meeting to get public
the
input
input
on it.
on if, because it also, if it was the sales, it would apply to anything delivered to your house also.
Right.
So
I'm a little
everything
concerned-
delivered to your house would be
I
taxed
am a
at.
little concerned with one property, putting something in place for one property that will span out to everyone else when it's just one area.
Well, the local options and the Lovejoy were two different conversations.
But it seems like that's the feeling right now that we're getting in the room.
The other balance, as someone has just mentioned, the gentleman living next to Lydia's old farm, is the fact that sometimes some of these activities, in fact, have a negative impact on the value of the properties around it.
They do, but there's many other properties that don't have a negative effect. That are small businesses that I don't feel like should fall under that, under a blanket because of one.
Just going directly to the point. There's no question that the property values around the Sherman property are going to be decreased. That the market will devalue those properties, no question about it. What kind of compensation, in fact, are you prepared for devaluation of those properties that are essentially right next to other properties that, in fact, do things or behave in such a fashion as to reduce the value of the residential properties around it?
But we're talking about selectively picking certain properties to do that with.
The market, on what basis is House A, valued? To some extent, the market, if House A all of a sudden can't sell the house, or not really because the value of the house is taking a nosedive, what is that? How is that person going to...
It's not really in our wheelhouse. I mean, the state is running the appraisal. I mean, we have outside, we don't even have in-town listers anymore whose job that is specifically to appraise the property. We have statewide appraisers who come in, and that would be a great question to ask them.
I didn't realize it was...
We don't have any say in that.
Okay. Fair enough, I understand, okay.
Like in what
Jonathan, feel free to chime in.
There's a database, Jonathan, I guess.
Yeah.
Site visits are done and you have a database that you enter information in, which then spits out a value for a property. There isn't a place in the database to say whether it is being used for any commercial, whether it be a rental, selling corn, or renting rooms and selling meals, right?
Right. I mean, the stuff is valued as what the structures actually are. Square footage, houses for water fixtures, porches, counter space, multiple outbuildings, and acreage, stuff
And that's
like that.
across the state. It's not just the town.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it works.
Statewide assessment.
Yeah, I mean,
statewide uses the same formulas.
Basically, we use a CAMA program, which the majority of the towns use that particular one's Microsolve, and the values were basically set for what things are worth when the last reappraisal was done. So when we go to put things in, a lot of these things are not going to be up to what things are currently selling, because some things are way more than, which is why we have the whole reason to have a reappraisal in the first place. But what we try to do is to, fairly go through all these things and what the value is. And we had a lot of things this year which were small little things, or, a deck, or, a garage, or things like that. And then we look at how much people paid for that. And then we run it through how much they said they paid for it on their building permit. And then we go through and through the program and, the square footage, and it was a sketch program, and then it figures out that, and you put every little thing that you go through about, like, say if it's a porch, or whether it's covered, or whether it's not, and then ultimately the program sort of spits out a value of what we can do.
But what is next to you isn't part of that value, which is the answer to your question.
There's no option in that program for what are you surrounded.
Right.
Should it?
Well,
but it's a statewide program.
Listers have a little bit of leeway, though, and have certainly heard people who felt aggrieved by what was happening next door to them and have looked
we
at
can lower things like.
Yes,
Yeah.
so they have some leeway
And
to
there is age
affect the
depreciation,
system.
like older houses would, be not.
But is that what you're trying to achieve? I feel like that's not what you personally are trying to achieve.
Well, no, that's one of the, that's some of the consequential, if you follow, some of the unintended consequences of some decisions, and I just want to make sure that everybody sort of thinks about the after effects. It's not just, there's certain things that are troubling me with respect to common sense, which is that a property, 10 acres generating $1 million worth of revenue is paying the same taxes as a property that 10 acres that generates $10,000 of revenue. In the normal course of business, that doesn't happen in a lot of places.
But they would be paying state taxes and feasibly so, and all the other.
The town does not gain any advantage or any benefit from that kind of activity. Very often, towns attract businesses because of ultimately because of the taxes that the businesses bring into the picture. I think there's certain things that are going on that are sort of a little bit of uncharted territory, but I certainly sympathize with the person next to Lydia's old farm, where in fact, if he were trying to sell his property, he would take a beating, and yet nothing seems to be. The town seems to be maybe not powerless, but at the very limited, seemingly, in what it can do about it. It's very frustrating. I sort of sympathize, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It is frustrating.
I agree.
It's an enforcement issue. I mean, it's a pain in the butt for the town to be playing policemen all over the place for the various things. But there are certain cases that are really particularly egregious. Lydia's farm certainly being one of them, because every time I drive by, I knew Lydia, I bought veal from Lydia, I bought beef from Lydia. My children played around with her animals in the barn, so I remember what it used to be very much. And I see it, and I shed tears every time my wife and I, drive by the place.
Okay, moving on.
Our Lydia neighbor is raising his hand.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, so just circling back, my question is, the only action I've heard in this discussion is the possibility of sending a letter, and I honestly don't think that's going to have a whole lot of effect. And so, is there anything the town can do to alleviate this situation? I mean, first of all, the gentleman who just spoke, I don't know who he is, but thank you. And my property value, it is what it is. It's really a travesty to this town. And I think we're all invested in having this situation alleviated. And so my question is there anything the town can do, aside from sending a letter, that can possibly work to solve this problem?
I would say we keep it on the agenda, send the letter, and do research on if they are and what they're in violation of.
Could we request a fire marshal to go and look and see if there's any fire hazards? Pardon me?
If they have tenants. If they don't have tenants, you can't do anything.
Aren't those renters?
Well, we don't know. They might be there for free. They might be, who knows?
Is there any question of permits? I mean, if it's a commercial business, wouldn't they need to have requested permits?
We need a use permit to have anything.
If they're operating a legal business, they should have a conditional use permit, is what he said, so.
And that will be, I'm assuming, part of the letter that we
Yeah.
look into
Correct.
or send to.
The letter will be sent to.
So can you drop a hammer on them and if they don't have a conditional use permit to run a business?
To cease and assist?
They can be fined.
Or
Be
fine?
fined.
Mr. Nichols can be fined.
Property owner can be fined, yeah. You have to determine that they've actually got a legal business going on there. Moving on. The year-to-date budget update. Did you get a bill from United yet?
I did, yes.
What was the total on that?
50,000
Was it, yeah.
for the grader.
Does the new fiscal year start like July 1st or something?
Yep.
It does.
So
This is
some of
only-
these numbers are almost so perfect.
They are, yeah, yep. And some of them, so the things that are final, all the wages, benefits, and all of those expenses are final, because I ran the last payroll of the fiscal year last Monday. We still probably may have some outstanding materials, highway materials invoices, and after this was printed, the outside contracting line, we received a bill for the replacement of the culvert on Castaldo Road from P&L, and that was $13,000. So overall, we're in good shape.
We all set with that? Draft and proposed zoning regulations, any updates? I spoke with a lawyer at the VTC, the LTC, and just went over with her what we're looking for, which is she's going to go through and see if the zoning regulations or changes are legal. And she's also going to go through the entire document and just kind of tweak it, give us some suggestions to tweak it. And they'll have to go back to the zoning commission too. She said that some of the things that she would suggest, and there's a lot of boilerplate language that was in there that was, according to, they take a state reg, and they just copied it. And she said what you really should do is refer to the regulation, because then when the regulation changes, you don't have to update your document.
Oh, yeah.
So she was gonna maybe dress it up that way too. Or give us suggestions to dress it up.
Okay, and she will look up the state regs, or we need to send it back to the zoning and have them put those in?
I'm not sure. We probably can do it ourselves.
Okay.
I spoke with her also, and she kind of would really highly suggest that we wait before we get any final language, that we listen to it ourselves. And she said that, for instance, a couple of the highlights that she told me was that, for instance, Killington has different rates for a different number of rooms, and she said that the landowners in the homeowners who are renting out in Killington seem fine with it. There hasn't been pushback. And she also pointed out that some of the language that we might kind of think is kind of frilly or just kind of extra, it's actually used by lawyers as legal justifications. And so, for instance, maintaining a pastoral nature of an area, or peace and quiet, that's not just kind of this extra language. It's actually used by the lawyers when they're trying to okay a document to say that it's a legal justification. So anyway, I'm hoping when the final program is available, I would like to listen to it. Apparently it's not available now. That's what she thought. She said there were a lot of questions that were asked at the webinar that she attended.
Oh, you're talking about the
Sorry,
webinar
yeah.
that Lenore went to.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
That's
you're
different.
fine. He was speaking about what he talked to the attorney about.
Okay.
No, you're fine, because she asked that we talked about that too.
Yeah.
But it has not been put on there, right? The meeting.
Yeah, it's not available yet.
I haven't seen a link to it yet, and I think Joe and Lenore will both get links to the recording.
Yeah.
Just, I think, because Killington's so much bigger than Andover, you know what I mean? The same as people have referred to other towns, it's just, they're so much bigger.
And the lawyer also said that she went to that seminar. She's up to speed on that information.
That's good to know, too.
But she said there's also a new change in the regulation that whether it's put through as zoning or as an ordinance, the select board can choose to vote on it ourselves. It doesn't have to go to the public. So we can choose to send it to the townspeople, but we don't absolutely have to. I think my feeling has been we wanted the townspeople to vote on it, but.
I feel pretty strongly that we had all said that, and that I'd like to continue down that route, but,
That's my opinion, but.
and we have publicly stated that that's what we would do.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's good to have everyone's input.
Yeah.
I didn't get to read the whole article, but I have seen other towns that have already had to tweak theirs. There's an article in the front of it. I just got the paper before I came here, but Plymouth is already tweaking theirs because some part of it's not working out. I didn't get far enough into it, but that would also fall into that category, that a slight change could be made to it in the future.
Yes.
You're saying? And then it could just not always, like if it was just a slight change, we could approve it rather than it have to be voted on.
Right.
Okay. Not saying that would happen, but it's something that could.
It could be a major change, and we can vote on it, but.
Right.
I think that's probably why the legislature did that. Because every town out there is trying to tweak them.
Yeah.
Okay, financial orders.
The other thing that I'm passing through is the official notification of the reclassification of Old Charmley Road, which you voted to approve at your last meeting, so I just need everyone's signatures so I can send that to the state. Thank you.
You don't need that one, right?
These are the wrong ones.
Thank you. Did you get everything?
I did not see this one.
That's the one that started at the other end.
This only has one signature, so. Susan, thanks for Richard. Oh, thank you, Richard.
I think.
Yeah, I was the first one, but Chris already did, he already has signed all that.
Is there any correspondence in that?
There is not.
I need to adjourn this session and suspend this session and go into executive session.
I second it. Are we going to?
I'll make a motion that we move into executive session.
And we're going to go in the other room, I think, right?
Right,
Correct.
so the TV can clean up.
We're gonna move into the kitchen so that they can break down there.
All those in favor of going into executive session?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.